Sarah's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She sat in the hard plastic chair outside her mother's hospital room, scrolling through her bank account on her phone. 247.83. That number had been staring back at her for 3 days straight. Rent was due in 5 days. Her mom's medical bills kept coming, thick white envelopes that made her stomach drop every time she opened the mailbox. And Marcus. God, Marcus was going to start bringing it up again. She could already hear him. You're behind. You said you'd have it. You can't just live here for free. As if she wasn't already working 2 jobs. As if she hadn't given up everything to move back home when their mom got sick. The doctor had said it was just a precautionary admission. Something with her heart rate. Mom had been complaining about chest pain for a week, brushing it off like she always did, and finally Sarah had just grabbed her keys and driven her to the ER. Now here they were, waiting for test results, and Sarah was doing what she did best. Worrying about everything at once. Her phone buzzed. A text from her manager at the coffee shop, "Can you pick up a shift tomorrow?" Someone called out. Sarah typed back yes before she even thought about it. That was 6 hours, maybe $40 after taxes. 40 toward the 600 she didn't have. The elevator doors down the hall opened. Sarah heard the footsteps before she saw him, that specific, quick walk. Marcus always walked like he was late for something important, even when he wasn't. "Hey," he said, barely looking at her as he approached. He was in his work clothes still. Button-up shirt, the tie he'd loosened but not removed. He worked in corporate compliance at some insurance company. He talked about it a lot, especially about how competitive the environment was, how he was up for a promotion. "How is she?" "Waiting on results." They said probably another hour. Marcus sat down 3 chairs away from her, not right next to her. Never right next to her. He pulled out his phone, same as Sarah, same as everyone else in the world it seemed. They sat in silence for a while. This was normal for them, existing in the same space but not really together. Sarah remembered when they were kids, before Dad left, before Mom got sick, before everything became about survival. Marcus used to make her laugh. Now he made her anxious. "You know you're going to need to figure out the money situation," Marcus said, still looking at his phone. "Like, this week." Sarah's jaw tightened. "I know, 'cause I can't keep carrying you. I'm not trying to be a dick about it, but I literally can't afford it right now. The mortgage just went up. My insurance went up. I've got my own stuff." "I know, Marcus. Do you, though? Because it seems like you're just expecting." "I'm working 2 jobs, Sarah said quietly. "I'm literally working 2 jobs and spending every other moment here with Mom. I'm not expecting anything. I'm trying." "Yeah, well, trying doesn't pay bills, does it?" Sarah felt her throat get tight. She didn't respond. There was nothing to say that she hadn't already said. Marcus wanted validation that he was the one carrying the weight, that he was the martyr. She'd learned that arguing back only made it worse. The doctor came out around 3 p.m. Mom's EKG looked fine, but they wanted to run some more tests, keep her overnight for observation. The doctor was being cautious, probably in his 60s, the type who took his job seriously. He explained things clearly, and Sarah felt a small wave of relief wash over her. Not fine, but not emergency. They could handle this. She and Marcus went back into the room to see their mom. Their mother was sitting up in the hospital bed, looking smaller than she had that morning, which didn't make sense but felt true anyway. She smiled when she saw them. "Hey, babies. I'm okay. They're just being extra careful." "That's good, Mom," Marcus said, and for a second, Sarah heard something softer in his voice. He bent down and kissed their mother on the forehead, and Sarah felt a twist in her chest. He did love her. He loved her. But somehow that didn't change anything about how he treated Sarah. They stayed for another hour. Mom was tired, the medication making her drowsy. By 5 p.m., the nurse suggested they go home, get some rest, come back tomorrow. Sarah hesitated. She wanted to stay, sleep in the chair if she had to. But her mom insisted, her words already starting to slur. In the elevator down, Marcus was quiet. His phone buzzed twice. He checked it both times, his face shifting into that focused expression he got when something work-related came up. "I'm going back to the office," he said as they walked to the parking lot. "I left some things unfinished. I'll probably be late." "Okay," Sarah said. She'd expected this. It was Tuesday. Marcus was always at the office late on Tuesdays. But then he stopped walking. He turned to look at her, and there was something in his expression that Sarah recognized. Frustration, resentment, the look of someone who'd been holding something in and couldn't hold it anymore. "Look," he said, "I'm not trying to be harsh, but we need to have a real conversation about this, about the living situation, because I can't do this forever and it's not fair for you to expect me to." "I know," Sarah said again. She was tired. So tired. "Do you have any plan, like any actual plan? Or are you just going to keep working part-time coffee shop jobs and hoping something falls into place?" Sarah opened her mouth, closed it. What was she supposed to say? That she was doing her best? He clearly didn't think her best was good enough. "I'm trying to figure it out," she said finally. "Well, figure it out faster. Because I'm serious, Sarah. I can give you another month, maybe 2, but then you need to figure out other options." He didn't wait for a response. He just turned and walked toward his car. A newer Honda, financed, he'd mentioned it more than once, and left Sarah standing in the parking lot with her mom's discharge papers in her hand and a headache starting behind her eyes. The drive home was silent. Sarah's mind was already spinning. She could move in with her friend Tasha, but Tasha had just had a baby and barely had room. She could try to find a cheaper place, but there weren't any in her price range, not in this town. She could ask for more hours at the coffee shop, but there weren't any available. She could find a third job, but when would she sleep? When would she be with her mom? There wasn't a solution. That was the thing nobody told you about real problems. Sometimes there just wasn't a solution, and you had to live with that. The next morning, Sarah was on her shift at the coffee shop by 6 a.m. The early morning rush was brutal, but she liked it anyway. Muscle memory. Get the order, make the drink, move on. Repeat. Don't think. Just move. Around 9:30, her coworker Janelle came in to take over the counter. Sarah was supposed to leave at 10, head home for an hour, then go pick up her mom from the hospital. "How's your mom?" Janelle asked, tying her apron. "Better. They're just keeping her for one more night. Probably." "That's good." "Hey, you look exhausted, babe. Like, actually exhausted." Sarah laughed a little. "I'm fine. You're not fine. You're barely holding it together." "Is it just the mom thing, or?" Sarah hesitated. She didn't usually talk about her personal stuff at work, but Janelle had always been nice to her, and something about standing in this coffee shop at 9:30 in the morning, covered in espresso stains and the smell of vanilla syrup, made Sarah want to tell someone the truth. "My brother's being kind of a jerk about me living with him," Sarah said quietly. "I lost my place about 6 months ago when Mom got sick, and I've been staying with him. He keeps reminding me I need to figure out other arrangements, but I don't have the money. And now he's giving me a deadline." Janelle made a face. "That's rough. Family's complicated." "Yeah, well, for what it's worth, you're a good person. You're taking care of your mom. That counts for something." Sarah nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Kindness from other people always made her want to cry, and she couldn't cry at work. The hospital parking lot was packed that afternoon. Sarah walked in, already mentally preparing herself for the discharge process. The paperwork, the instructions, the follow-up appointments. But as she walked through the automatic doors and toward the elevators, she heard yelling. It took her a second to recognize it was Marcus. She could hear him before she saw him, his voice loud and sharp in a way she'd rarely heard before. Not angry yelling. Worse than that. Humiliating yelling. Sarah quickened her pace. She found him in the waiting room near the reception desk, and he wasn't alone. A nurse was there, 2 other patients were staring, and there, on one of the chairs by the window, was their mother, still in her hospital gown, looking small and terrified. "You're destroying me with this," Marcus was saying, his face flushed. "Do you have any idea how this looks? She's just sitting here not contributing, and I'm supposed to what? Just keep paying for everything. It doesn't work that way." The nurse looked uncomfortable. "Sir, you need to lower your voice. This is a hospital. I'm not talking to you," Marcus snapped. Then he saw Sarah. Their eyes locked for a second. Sarah felt her body go cold. "You," he said, pointing at her. "You need to figure this out today. I'm done. I'm absolutely done being the bad guy here." "Marcus, stop," Sarah said quietly. "Stop right now." "No, I'm done." He stepped closer to her. "You think it's okay to just freeload, to expect me to take care of you and Mom while you make minimum wage at a coffee shop? That's pathetic. You're pathetic." Sarah felt something shift in her chest. Not sadness. Something sharper. "Get out of my way," Marcus said. He wasn't talking to Sarah. He was talking to their mother, who'd stood up and was trying to move toward Sarah. Their mother was still hooked up to monitors, the IV still in her arm. "Marcus." Their mom started. He grabbed Sarah's shoulder hard. His fingers dug in through her shirt, and he pushed her backward. "You figure it out," he said. His voice was low now, meant just for her, but the whole waiting room had gone silent. 1 month. "That's it? 1 month or you're out." He released her shoulder and walked away. Just left. Through the automatic doors and out to the parking lot like nothing had happened. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the nurse approached Sarah's mother gently. "Are you okay? Do you need us to call security?" Sarah's mother looked at Sarah. Sarah looked at the other people in the waiting room. A man with a broken arm, an older woman with her granddaughter, a young guy on his phone. They'd all seen it. All of it. "No," their mom said quietly. "No, we're okay." But they weren't okay. And as Sarah helped her mother back to her room to get properly discharged, something was changing in Sarah's mind. Something that felt like clarity cutting through fog. She'd been trying to be the good daughter, the responsible one, the person who just absorbed the abuse and kept moving forward. She'd been swallowing Marcus's cruelty like it was her responsibility to manage his feelings. Not anymore. By the time they left the hospital, Sarah had made a decision. She was going to do something she'd never done before. She was going to stop playing by the rules of their broken family system. She just didn't know exactly what yet, but she would figure it out. Sarah didn't sleep that night. She sat on the couch in Marcus's living room, the one she wasn't really supposed to use because he kept saying she'd stain it, and stared at her laptop screen for hours. Her mom was asleep in the guest room, the one that had become her room, medication making her rest easy for once. The thing about rage is that it's useful when you channel it right. Sarah had spent so many years swallowing hers, but sitting there in the dark at 2 a.m., she realized she'd been thinking about this all wrong. She didn't need to scream back. She didn't need to confront Marcus, cry, or beg him to understand. She didn't need any of that. Marcus cared about one thing above everything else: his image, his job, his reputation at work. She'd heard him on the phone enough times to know the landscape. He talked about his workplace constantly, about his boss, about the company culture, about how important it was to be the right kind of employee. He'd mentioned HR twice in the past month, once to complain about someone who'd been let go over some sensitive stuff, and once to brag about how his company had a zero-tolerance policy for certain behaviors. Sarah opened a new browser tab and searched for his company's website. It took her 15 minutes to find what she needed. The HR department contact page, a direct phone number, an email address. She read it 3 times. Her heart was doing something weird in her chest, not quite pounding but close. This was real. This was actually happening. The thing was, Marcus had committed assault. In public, at a hospital, with witnesses. That wasn't an exaggeration or a misinterpretation. He'd grabbed her, pushed her, and verbally threatened her in front of at least 5 people. The nurse had asked if they needed security. Sarah wasn't going to lie. She was just going to tell the truth. She picked up her phone. Then she put it down, picked it up again. The time was 2:47 a.m. She couldn't call at 2:47 a.m. That would seem unhinged. She'd seem unhinged. She waited until 8:30 a.m. after she'd showered, after she'd made her mom breakfast, after she'd stared at the number for 3 more hours. Her hands were shaking when she dialed. "Good morning. Thank you for calling Heritage Insurance," a woman's voice said. Professional, cheerful, like a recorded greeting that'd been played 1,000 times. "How can I direct your call?" "Hi." "Yes," Sarah said. Her voice sounded smaller than she wanted it to. "I need to reach the HR department. I need to report an incident involving one of your employees." There was a pause. Then, "Okay, hold one moment, I'm going to transfer you." The hold music was instrumental, some generic corporate jazz. Sarah closed her eyes and breathed. This was happening. She was actually doing this. "HR, this is David speaking. How can I help you?" David had a deeper voice, older maybe. Sarah took another breath. I'm calling to report an incident involving an employee. His name is Marcus Chen. He works in the compliance department." "Okay, and what is the nature of your report?" "I'm his sister," Sarah said. She decided to lead with that. It made sense. It showed there were witnesses that this wasn't random. Yesterday afternoon, March 14th, at approximately 3:15 p.m., he came to the hospital where my mother was being treated. In the public waiting room, in front of hospital staff and other patients. He verbally threatened me and physically assaulted me. She said it all at once, like ripping off a Band-Aid. He grabbed my shoulder, pushed me backward, and told me I had 1 month to leave his house or he'd make me leave. He called me pathetic. He was yelling loud enough that people in the waiting room were staring. A nurse asked if we needed security to get involved. David was quiet for a moment. Sarah could hear him typing. "Can you give me your name and contact information?" he asked. Sarah gave it to him. Her name, her phone number, her email. Each thing felt like evidence, like documentation of her own existence in this situation. "And you're saying this happened in a public location?" "There were witnesses?" "Yes." "At County Hospital." "The nurse on duty?" "I think her name was Sarah too, actually. She witnessed the whole thing. And there were patients waiting in the room. I don't know their names, but they were there." More typing. "Okay, I'm going to make a note of this incident. We take reports like this very seriously. We have a zero-tolerance policy for workplace violence or violent behavior involving our employees. Do you want to file a formal complaint, or are you just reporting this as a heads-up?" Sarah hadn't thought about this distinction. Filing a formal complaint sounded like she was going to war. Just reporting it sounded like she was just reporting it, telling the truth. "I want to file a formal complaint," she said quietly. "Okay, I'm going to send you some forms via email. You'll need to fill them out with as much detail as you can remember. Dates, times, exact words if possible, witnesses. Once I receive those back, we'll initiate an investigation." "An investigation?" "Yes. We'll interview the employee, look into the incident, and determine what disciplinary action, if any, is appropriate. Given what you're describing, physical contact, threats, public nature of the incident, this will be taken very seriously." Sarah felt something shift in her body, relief and terror all at once. "One more thing," David said. "I want to make sure you're safe. If you're currently living with this person and you feel unsafe, we'd recommend reaching out to local authorities or a domestic situation hotline." "I'm okay," Sarah said. "I'm leaving soon anyway." "Good. All right. I'm going to get those forms sent to you right now. Fill them out at your convenience and send them back. You should expect to hear from us within the next week or so about next steps." "Okay. Thank you." Sarah hung up and sat very still on the couch. What had she just done? The forms arrived in her email 5 minutes later. She opened them with her heart in her throat. There were 5 pages. They asked for everything. Dates, times, exact words, the names of witnesses if she knew them, her relationship to the employee, the nature of the incident, any injuries sustained. Sarah typed it all out. She described the hospital waiting room. She described Marcus's tone shifting from generic cruelty to something sharper. She described the grab, the push, the way his fingers had dug into her shoulder. She included the threat about 1 month. She added that this was preceded by months of financial coercion and emotional abuse. She didn't exaggerate. She didn't add things that didn't happen. She just told the truth, exactly as it had occurred, in clear, simple language. It took her an hour to fill out the forms. When she was done, she printed them, signed them, scanned them, and emailed them back to David before she could change her mind. Then she sat in the silence of the apartment and waited for something. She wasn't sure what. Regret, maybe. The feeling that she'd made a terrible mistake. But it didn't come. Marcus didn't come home that night. Sarah found out via text, a simple message sent at 6:47 p.m. seen working late. "There's leftovers in the fridge." He didn't come home the next night either. Or the night after that. Sarah kept waiting for something to happen. For her phone to ring, for him to confront her, for the investigation to blow up. But there was nothing. Just silence and the strange feeling of living in a house with someone who was actively avoiding her. By day 5, she'd convinced herself that nothing was going to come of it. That David from HR had filed the forms and forgotten about them. That there were probably hundreds of reports like hers, that hers was too small, too ordinary, too family drama, adjacent to matter. Then her phone rang on a Thursday afternoon, a known number. Sarah almost didn't answer it. "Hello? Is this Sarah Chen?" "Yes." This is Rachel Morrison from Heritage Insurance Human Resources. I'm calling regarding your formal complaint against Marcus Chen. Do you have a few minutes to talk? Sarah's mouth went dry. She was at work at the coffee shop, covered in milk foam and the smell of caramel. She stepped into the back room. Yeah, I can talk, she said. Great. So we've completed our initial investigation into the incident you reported on March 14th at County Hospital. We were able to verify your account with hospital staff, and we've also conducted an interview with Marcus. Sarah felt her legs get shaky. She sat down on a milk crate. What did he say? Well, he's provided his version of events, which differs from yours in some respects, but we were able to corroborate several details with the hospital. Specifically, the witness account from the RN on duty supports your version of physical contact occurring. Rachel paused. Sarah couldn't tell if that was good or bad. We take incidents like this very seriously. Rachel continued. Violence or aggressive behavior, even in a personal context, reflects on our company's values and on how we manage risk. Heritage Insurance has a zero-tolerance policy for violent behavior. So what does that mean? Sarah asked. What happens now? We've placed Marcus on a 2-week suspension pending further review. During this time, he's required to attend a behavioral counseling session, and there will be a formal meeting with himself, his direct supervisor, and HR to determine next steps. Those next steps could include termination, depending on his cooperation with the process. Sarah couldn't speak for a moment. Are you still there? Rachel asked. Yeah, I'm here. So he's suspended. As of this morning, yes. He was notified at 9 a.m. After Rachel hung up, Sarah sat on the milk crate for a very long time. Her coworker Janelle found her there 10 minutes later, still holding the phone. You okay? Janelle asked. Sarah wasn't sure how to answer that question. She felt like she was floating, like something inside her had shifted, and she couldn't quite find her center again. Yeah, she said finally. I think so, I did something. And it actually worked. What do you mean? Sarah shook her head. I can't really get into it. But my brother, the one I told you about, he's having a really bad week. Janelle laughed. Good. Honestly, good. He sounds like he deserved it. Marcus came home at 7 p.m. that evening. Sarah heard his car pull into the garage, heard the door open. She was sitting on the couch with her mom, who was watching an old episode of Golden Girls. He stood in the doorway of the living room for a long moment before he spoke. What did you do? His voice was quiet. Not angry. Worse than angry. He sounded broken. Sarah turned to look at him. He looked bad. His tie was loose, his hair was messed up, and his eyes were red like he'd been rubbing them. She felt something complex twist in her chest. Satisfaction and pity mixed together. I told them the truth, Sarah said. You reported me to HR. At my job, I reported what you did in public, in front of witnesses. Marcus laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. You went to HR over family stuff. Sarah, do you understand what you've done? I'm suspended. Suspended. They said I might lose my job. My job. You grabbed me, Sarah said. Her voice was steady now. You pushed me. You did that in a hospital, in front of hospital staff. I didn't make you do that. I didn't. Marcus started, then stopped. He ran his hand through his hair. We're family. You don't go to someone's employer. That's not how this works. Then how does it work? Sarah asked. Because the way it's been working is you get to treat me however you want, and I just have to accept it. And I'm done. I'm done accepting it. Marcus looked at their mother, like he was appealing to her. But their mom just turned back to her show. I don't have anything to say to you, Marcus said finally. He went upstairs. They heard his bedroom door close, hard enough that it echoed. Sarah felt her body release tension she didn't know she was holding. Her hands were shaking again, but different this time. Not scared. Just shaking. You did the right thing. Her mom said quietly, not taking her eyes off the TV. Did I? Sarah asked. Her mom muted the show and looked at her. He put his hands on you. In public. What were you supposed to do? Just keep letting him. Love doesn't mean letting people hurt you. Sarah leaned against her mom's shoulder, and they sat like that in the silence, while upstairs Marcus sat alone in his room, and everything they'd all built fell apart slowly, piece by piece. By the next morning, Marcus had made his decision. Sarah found a note on the kitchen counter, written in his precise handwriting. You need to be out by the end of the month. I'm giving you 30 days. That's more than the law requires. After that, I'm changing the locks. Talk to a lawyer if you have questions. Sarah read it 3 times. She'd known this was coming. She'd literally told HR that she was planning to leave anyway. But seeing it in writing, knowing that her brother, the same one she'd sat with in the hospital waiting room just 2 weeks ago, was now counting down the days to her eviction, made something in her throat tighten. Her mom read the note over her shoulder. "Okay," her mom said simply. "We'll figure it out." Sarah wanted to believe that. She really did. The next week was strange. Marcus was still in the house, but he wasn't. He'd wake up, go to meetings with his lawyer and his HR representative, then disappear. Sarah didn't know where he went. Maybe to a friend's place. Maybe just driving around. He didn't eat the food she made. He didn't speak to her. When their mom tried to talk to him, he gave one-word answers. Sarah threw herself into work. She picked up every shift she could at the coffee shop. She started looking into second jobs again, but this time she wasn't looking for a roommate situation or part-time retail. She was looking for a way to get her mom into assisted living or a shared apartment. Something stable. Something that didn't depend on Marcus. That didn't depend on anyone. The reality of the numbers hit her fast and hard. A 1-bedroom apartment in their town ran $950 minimum. Her take-home pay from the coffee shop was around $1,200 a month. That left $250 for food, utilities, transportation, her mom's medications, all of it. It wasn't possible. It was mathematically impossible. She called her friend Tasha on a Tuesday night, sitting in her car in the coffee shop parking lot. "Hey, babe," Tasha answered. "What's up? I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Is your offer still open? The one about me and my mom moving in?" There was a pause. Sarah could hear Tasha's baby crying in the background. "Like move in? For real?" "Yeah, for real. I know you don't have a lot of space, but..." "Sarah, I love you, but that's not going to work. I'm serious. My place is a 2-bedroom and we're already packed in here. My mom's visiting next month for 3 weeks. There's just no room." Sarah had known that before she asked. That was the thing about being in crisis. You started asking for things you already knew people couldn't give you, just in case you were wrong. "Okay," Sarah said. "I understand. Have you looked into subsidized housing, or like those emergency assistance programs? I feel like there's stuff out there. Not that I qualify for. I make too much money, technically. Even though I don't, obviously." After she hung up with Tasha, Sarah sat in her car for a while. The parking lot was empty, just the sodium lights casting everything in that sickly orange glow. She thought about calling her dad. She hadn't talked to him in 6 years, not since he'd told her he had a new family and didn't have room for old drama. She didn't call him. Instead, she drove to the library and spent 2 hours looking at everything. Shelters, emergency housing, roommate listings, job opportunities in other towns. Nothing clicked. Everything seemed impossible or too complicated or too far away from her mom's doctors. When she got home, Marcus was in the living room. It was the first time she'd seen him since the note. "How's the job search going?" he asked. He said it like they were 2 people making normal conversation, not 2 people in the process of dismantling a family. "It's going," Sarah said. She didn't want to talk to him. "Because I've been thinking," Marcus continued, "and I want to be fair about this. If you can't find a place by the end of the month, you can have an extension. I'm not a monster." Sarah turned to look at him. He looked exhausted. His eyes were bloodshot, and he'd lost weight in just a week. "What happened with your job?" she asked. Marcus looked away. "They're still evaluating the situation. They haven't fired me yet. But they're not happy. My supervisor basically said they're not sure they can trust me in a leadership position after this." He said it quietly, and Sarah felt that complicated mixture of emotions again. Satisfaction that he was facing consequences, but also something else. Recognition that he was suffering, that she'd done this, that this was real and permanent. "I'm sorry," she said. And she meant it even though she wasn't sorry about reporting him. She was just sorry that it had come to this. Marcus looked at her like she'd said something in a language he didn't understand. "You reported me to my company. You probably destroyed my career before it really started. And you're sorry? I'm sorry that this is what it took. I'm sorry that you couldn't just not grab me. I'm sorry that you couldn't treat me like a person instead of a problem you had to manage. That's not fair," Marcus said. No, Sarah agreed. It's not. Life's not fair. You taught me that. 2 weeks before the end of month deadline, Sarah made a decision. She called her old high school guidance counselor, Mrs. Patterson, who'd always told her students to stay in touch. "Sarah! How wonderful to hear from you," Mrs. Patterson said over the phone. "What's been going on in your world?" Sarah told her. Not everything. Just the basics. She'd left her own apartment to care for her sick mother. She'd been staying with her brother. The situation had become untenable, and now she had 2 weeks to find new housing for herself and her mom on about $1,200 at a month. "Oh, sweetheart," Mrs. Patterson said, and Sarah heard genuine concern in her voice. "That's a very difficult situation. Let me think about what resources might be available." 3 days later, Mrs. Patterson called her back with information. There was a community living facility about 30 minutes away, affiliated with a nonprofit that offered subsidized housing for seniors and their caregivers. It wasn't luxury, but it was safe. The cost was on a sliding scale based on income. Sarah looked at the website. The pictures showed clean common areas, a small garden, a community room with a TV, individual apartments with kitchenettes. She called and asked about availability. "We have a 1-bedroom opening in 6 weeks, the woman said. "There would be $650 a month for your mother, and if you're listed as a live-in caregiver, there's a separate unit in the same building for you at $400 a month." Sarah's hands were shaking as she wrote down the numbers. 150. That was only 150 more than what she was making at the coffee shop, and that was before factoring in anything else. But it was possible. It was actually possible. "We do have temporary housing available if you need to relocate before then," the woman continued. "It's a shared room situation for a month or 2, but we can get you in next week if you need it." Sarah booked it. She didn't tell Marcus right away. She just started packing. When she finally told him, it was the day before she was supposed to leave. She found him in the kitchen making coffee. "I found a place," she said. "A housing community about 30 minutes from here. It's subsidized. My mom gets her own apartment. I get mine. We move tomorrow." Marcus stared at her. "Tomorrow. Yeah, it's temporary housing for the first 6 weeks, then we move to the permanent units. It's the best option we have." "Sarah, He didn't finish the sentence. He just looked at her, and she could see something breaking in his face. "That's not here. That's you actually leaving?" "Yeah," Sarah said. "That's me actually leaving." He nodded slowly. "And your mom's okay with that?" "She's relieved. She hated the tension here." They stood in silence for a long moment. "I never wanted it to be like this," Marcus said finally. His voice was very quiet. "I just wanted you to figure it out, you know. I wanted you to grow up and be independent and not need me to take care of you. I thought if I pushed hard enough, I'd what?" Sarah asked. "Magically find a full-time job making enough money to support me and mom and pay rent in like 5 seconds. "I don't know," Marcus said. He rubbed his face. "I don't know. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was just so angry all the time, and instead of dealing with that, I just took it out on you." Sarah wanted to say something comforting. She wanted to tell him it was okay, that she forgave him, that they could move past this. But she didn't say any of that, because it would have been a lie. "The investigation with HR," she said instead. "Did they make a decision?" "I'm fired," Marcus said flatly. "They told me today. They said that the behavior I exhibited, combined with how I handled the investigation process, which apparently I didn't handle well, demonstrated that I'm not aligned with the company's values." Sarah felt her stomach drop. She'd gotten what she wanted. She'd made him hurt. And now that it was done, it felt hollow. "I'm sorry," she said again. "Stop saying that," Marcus said, but there was no anger in his voice, just exhaustion. The next morning, Sarah and her mom loaded everything they could fit into Sarah's car. Mrs. Patterson had called in a favor with the facility, and they'd arranged a van to help with the bigger items. Sarah worked quickly, efficiently, not letting herself think too much about what was happening. She left a note for Marcus on the kitchen counter. "The house is yours. I left the spare set of keys on the table. My forwarding address is hen facility address. Mom's doing well. We'll be okay. I hope you will be too." She wanted to write more. She wanted to explain herself, to justify what she'd done, to make him understand that it wasn't personal. But it was. It was deeply personal. It was the most personal thing she'd ever done. On the drive to the facility, her mom was quiet. Sarah kept glancing over at her, worried. "You okay?" Sarah asked finally. "Yeah," her mom said. "I'm just thinking about how much has changed. About how you went from being so scared and so small to doing something really big. I feel like I ruined everything," Sarah said. "I got my brother fired. He did that," her mom said firmly. "You didn't make him grab you. You didn't make him threaten you. You just didn't accept it anymore." Sarah nodded, but the guilt didn't lift. The facility was small and clean, exactly like the pictures. They were shown to a shared room on the second floor. 2 beds, a small window overlooking a parking lot, a bathroom down the hall. It wasn't home. But it was safe, and it was theirs, and it was the beginning of something different. That night, after her mom had fallen asleep, Sarah sat on her bed and let herself cry. Not because she felt victorious. Not because she regretted what she'd done. But because the world was complicated, and doing the right thing didn't always feel right. Because revenge, even when it was justified, still tasted like ash. Because her brother was her brother, and now he was just someone she used to know. 6 months later, Sarah was in her permanent apartment at the facility. It was small. A bedroom, a living room, a kitchenette. But it was hers. She decorated it slowly, found a used couch on Facebook Marketplace, hung up some photos of her and her mom. Her mom was in the apartment 2 floors down doing well. She was taking an art class. She'd made friends. She had bad days and good days, but the stability seemed to be helping. Sarah was still working at the coffee shop, but she'd started taking classes online for medical office administration. If she could get that certification, the pay would be better. It would take time, but there was time now. There was a plan. She hadn't heard from Marcus in 5 months. Mrs. Patterson had mentioned, during one of their catch-up phone calls, that he'd moved back in with their parents' old house, that he was working for a smaller firm now, that he was seeing a therapist. Sarah didn't know if that was true. She didn't know if he was okay. Part of her still wanted to check on him. Part of her knew she couldn't. One evening, as Sarah was making dinner in her small kitchenette, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer it. "Hello," she said. There was silence on the other end. Just breathing. "Hello," she said again. "It's Marcus." Sarah's hand went cold. "Hey," she said carefully. "I'm not calling to guilt you," Marcus said quickly. "I'm not calling to ask you to feel bad or to tell you I'm suffering or any of that. I wanted you to know that I've been working on some things. I'm in therapy. I'm trying to understand why I treated you the way I did and why I acted like it was your responsibility to manage that." Sarah sat down at her small table. "Okay," she said. "I'm glad. I can't undo what happened. I can't get my job back or anything. But I wanted to apologize. For real. Not for you to forgive me necessarily, but just so you know that I recognize what I did. I recognize that I hurt you, and that you had every right to do what you did." Sarah felt tears starting again, but this time they felt different. Cleaner, maybe. "Thank you for calling," she said. "I hope you're doing well," Marcus said. "I hope your mom's okay." "Oh, she is. We're managing." "Good. That's good." After he hung up, Sarah sat at her table for a long time, not moving. She didn't feel happy exactly. She didn't feel like closure had been achieved or that everything was suddenly fixed. But something had shifted. Not forgiveness, exactly, but acknowledgement. The beginning of understanding that sometimes the people who hurt us are also hurting themselves, and that doesn't excuse the hurt, but it explains it a little. The thing about real revenge is that it doesn't feel the way you think it will. Sarah got justice. She got consequences for what her brother did. But she also got a new job search, unstable housing, a 6-month waiting list, and a complicated grief over a relationship that would never be the same. She got the truth heard, but she lost her family. And that's the story nobody tells you about fighting back. It costs something. Always. If you're watching this and you're thinking about reporting someone, about standing up for yourself, know that. Know that there will be a cost. But know also that sometimes paying that cost is the only thing that saves your life. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe, share it, comment and tell us what you would have done. And remember, your safety, your dignity, your right to not be treated like garbage that matters more than anything else.